Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with RCAF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, Dutch farmers are teaching us a valuable lesson, and if only we'll listen. The lesson applies to the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, but few want to connect the dots. So let's do that today. Now, responding to the green movement as if on steroids, the Dutch government blamed all Dutch farmers for polluting the atmosphere. And by all, I mean independent family farmers and corporate agribusiness farmers alike. Their government has singled all of them out from among all Dutch industries. The farmers are on the front line. They've won first place with a blue ribbon. Now, initially, Dutch farmers are to reduce their emissions of nitrous oxide and ammonia by 50% by 2030, and they will all incur the cost of doing so. Care to take a guess at who gets hurt the most by increased production costs? Yes, it's the independent family-scale farmers and ranchers who will get hurt the most and the quickest. Now, the Dutch government apparently doesn't care and has made the callous statement that not all Dutch farmers will be able to stay in business. And that's why about 40,000 Dutch farmers are protesting. So how does this relate to the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, or GRSB? Well, the very existence of the GRSB and all the clamoring by global beef packers and their affiliated producer organizations to have a seat at the table are themselves an unequivocal statement that the way cattle are produced today must be polluting our environment. So the GRSB has defined for the world a problem, the same problem that Dutch farmers are being accused of, polluting the atmosphere. And now that the problem has been identified, a solution must be found. And in this case, the solution is the imposition of new production standards. The issue then becomes, how do you implement and enforce the solution? And the most efficient way to do that is to put the burden on farmers to prove their compliance as a condition of having access to the marketplace. In other words, force farmers to prove through third-party verifications that they have met the conditions to be allowed timely access to the market. And now the relationship between what's happening to Dutch farmers and what the GRSB is all about should be crystal clear. As attorney rancher and GRSB expert Tracy Hunt has been warning us for years, there are only two things the GRSB needs to control your cattle farms and ranches. First is the proper mix of market concentration, and second is the ability to control access to that market. And the way to accomplish this is with mandatory full-chain RFID traceability, RFID ear tags, third-party verifications, and reporting of animal movements. And then to have the four largest packers that control 85% of the fed cattle market to simply deny access to that market to non-participants. Indeed, the architect of the GRSB, Jason Clay, with the World Wildlife Fund, clearly stated that forcing cattle producers to comply with GRSB standards starts first with measuring what cattle producers do, such as measuring the number and movements of cattle from each cattle operation. And once the industry is measured, the next step is to manage, that is, to force compliance with whatever social or environmental standard the GRSB wishes to impose. And finally, the bottleneck in the supply chain is used to limit access to the marketplace for those who've not yet acquiesced to that mandate. Obviously, in the cattle and beef industry, limiting access to only compliant cattle would be easy with just 4 global beef packers controlling 85% of that fed cattle market. So the only difference between what's happening to the Dutch versus what the GRSB is trying to do is that in the Netherlands, it's the government that has made up the made-up standards and that has imposed additional production costs on farmers. And in the GRSB, it's the globalist banks, food processors, and all their minions who are making up the made-up standards and forcing producers to comply. But even that difference is negligible at best. You see, Tracy Hunt has described what the GRSB really is. It's a privately owned, top-down, transnational private corporate government that wants to force you to comply with unnecessary environmental and social regulations. This threat is no longer imaginary. If you've been supporting the GRSB, or even if you've been ambivalent towards it, it's time to change that and begin standing up against it. Otherwise, America could soon end up with a red ribbon behind the Dutch. We simply do not want to go there, but the GRSB planning is well underway. Please join with us to preserve the liberty and independence of America's cattle farmers and ranchers. You can do that at our website, r-cafusa.com. With that, have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.